The outbuilding on the north slope had been empty since my wife Clara died. I left it standing because Clara would have said tearing down a good roof was wasteful, and because going inside it meant finishing something I was not yet ready to finish. All the things she had stored in there, the things she never got to use, the winters I kept telling myself I would deal with it and then did not. 3 Octobers. I rode past that door without stopping. The 4th October, my horse stopped himself. There was smoke, a thin thread of it, rising from the gap under the eave, where the boards had never quite sat flush. I sat on Grover and watched it for a long while. The morning was cold and perfectly still, the kind of still a mesa holds in the hour before winter comes down for good. I sat there long enough that Grover turned one ear back at me, which is his way of asking what we are doing. Then I swung down off the saddle and pushed open the door. She was standing when I walked in, not running, not reaching for anything, standing with her back against the south wall and her hands at her sides, looking at me, the way a person looks who has long since decided that the first few seconds of a stranger's arrival tell you everything worth knowing about what follows. I looked back at her. She was Shoshone, I could see that. I judged her at 30, maybe a few years more. Her coat had worn through at both elbows. The pack at her feet was small and neatly kept. I looked at Clara's crates along the far wall, undisturbed, stacked exactly as I had left them 3 years ago. She had taken nothing. "I will leave," she said. "Where to?" I said. She did not answer right away. The fire of 3 sticks in my tin basin crackled and settled. "I am going to the reading settlement in the valley," she said. I stopped when the cold came. "The territory bought reading out in the spring," I said. "Nobody is there anymore." She did not flinch at that. People who have already lost the ground they were standing on do not flinch at losing it again. They recalculate, and if you look carefully, you can watch them doing it. Her expression did not change, but something behind it did, and I could see her putting away one road and looking for the next. I looked around the outbuilding, the tin basin, 3 sticks, her coat, the pack, Clara's undisturbed crates. "There is a spare cabin on the east side of my main house," I said. "Good stove, roof holds, a bolt on the inside of the door. You are welcome to it through the winter, and I will not ask anything for it." She watched me. "I do not ask for charity," she said. "Then call it wages," I said. "The fence line on the north slope needs restringing before the freeze. A week's work, maybe less. If you want to do it, the cabin is yours, and the work is fair pay. If you would rather not, the cabin is still yours. There is no condition on the offer either way." She considered me for a long moment, then she picked up her pack. Her name was Layla Coldwater. She told me that first evening when I carried wood to the east cabin, and she came outside to take it herself, rather than let me bring it through the door. Her band had been dispersed by a territorial land order the previous spring. 11 years on the same high ground, 40 days to leave, and the agents arrived on the 30th. She said it the way a person says a thing they have already finished grieving and do not want made into something larger than it was. I told her my name. She said she had already seen it on the survey records in the outbuilding. She had known it since the first morning and had not mentioned it until now. I walked back to the main house and thought about that for a while. She worked the fence line in 3 days instead of 7. She strung wire with an economy of motion that came from long practice. Knowledge that lives in the hands and cannot be explained, only recognized. When she finished, she knocked at the kitchen door and told me the north line was done and asked if there was other work. I said there was. She nodded, and that was the end of it. We settled into a quiet pattern over the following weeks. She worked the north pasture, helped move the small herd down before the hard freeze, split wood with an axe that would have tried most men and said nothing about it. I cooked supper in the evenings. After the first week she started cooking instead, and the food was considerably better than mine had been in 3 years, so I let her without argument. In late November she pointed out where the ground along the east ridge was sinking in a way she had seen before, a pattern where buried ice pushed the soil up from below and let it settle crooked come the spring thaw. She said, if I left it, I would lose fence posts in April, 3 or 4 of them. I had been running cattle on this mesa for 11 years and had not noticed it. We reset the posts in the last good week, before the ground froze, and in the spring, they were the only posts on the east line that held without shifting. I did not say much about that. Neither did she, but I thought about it for a long time riding home, and I started to understand that she had been watching this ground more carefully than I had, longer maybe, even from inside the outbuilding. I did not know what to make of that either, except that it kept being true. We did not talk much in those early weeks. That suited us both. A mesa winter is long though, and silence shared long enough becomes its own kind of conversation. Over evenings by the kitchen stove I learned things about her the way she gave them. Nothing withheld but nothing more than was needed. I learned she had been traveling since June, working where work was offered, moving when it ran out. I learned about the land order and the 40 days in full. I learned her husband had died of fever 6 years prior, that her grown daughter lived far to the north with her husband's people, which was why Layla had turned south when the order came instead of north. She learned about Clara. I told her across several evenings, the same measured way. Clara who had died in this same October 3 years back. Clara's things in the crates in the outbuilding. 3 years, I had ridden past that door. She did not say anything about that directly, but the following week I went to the supply room for lamp oil and found Clara's things there on a shelf, moved quietly, handled with more care than I had managed, nothing put out of sight but everything placed somewhere sensible. She had said nothing about doing it. I said nothing about finding it. But I thought about it for a long time after, riding the north pasture in the late afternoon gray, and I understood something about the kind of person she was. December came in harder than I expected. The temperature dropped one night past what I believed the mesa could hold, and I lost 3 head of cattle before I got outside. Leela was out there within minutes, her coat still being pulled on, and for 5 hours in the dark and the cold, we worked the remaining herd down to the lower barn. Her voice low and steady with the animals, her movements sure in the dark. Mine not much less sure than they usually were, but glad all the same to have another pair of hands that knew what they were about. We came back to the main house near dawn, and I put coffee on, and she sat at my kitchen table, and neither of us said a word for a long while, and I thought, this is the most settled I have felt in 3 years. I put the coffee in front of her, and sat down at the other end of the table, and let the quiet be what it was. By February I knew I was not going to stop noticing her. That was the plain fact, and I am not a man who spends long arguing with a plain fact. The question was when and how to say something, and whether what I felt was something she would want offered, or something she would want left alone. She settled it in her own way, as she had settled most things. End of February, a Wednesday afternoon, gray sky, and cold enough to see your breath in the open. I came around the east corner of the house with an armload of wood, and found her standing still, looking south at the distance. She did not turn when she heard me. You have been working up to asking me to stay, she said. I have, I said. A moment of quiet. I have conditions, she said. Tell me, I said. She turned then, and looked at me the way she had looked at me the first morning in the outbuilding, steady and direct, and without apology for either. The east cabin was hers for as long as she wanted it. She would be introduced to anyone who asked as what she was, nothing softened, and nothing explained away. All matters concerning her own life were hers to decide. If she ever wanted to leave, she left, and no argument from me on any of it. Those are all reasonable, I said. I know they are, she said. I am telling you in case you did not. I came close to smiling. It surprised me. I had not come close to it in 3 years and had stopped expecting to. I looked down at the woodpile until I had myself sorted out. There is one more thing, she said. All right, I said. In April, I want to go to the Reading Valley. To see what is left and speak to who is still there. I want you to take me. I will take you, I said. She nodded once. That was the agreement. We rode to the Reading Valley in the middle of April, under a sky that had finally come blue again after the long gray of winter. She spent 2 days among the families still there, a handful of people on ground the territory had not bothered filing on, because it was not worth the ink. I tended the horses and kept to myself, and on the 3rd morning, she came back to the fire I had made, and sat down across from it. There is a woman there, she said. Her husband died last autumn. She has 2 young children, and nowhere to go. I considered that for a moment. The outbuilding? I said. The east cabin, she said. I will move my things to the main house. I looked at her across the fire. That is a different arrangement than the one we discussed, I said. It is, she said. I am asking whether you will agree to this one. I will, I said. We rode back with Mara and her children, a girl of 5 and a boy of 3 who fell asleep against my arm on the second day's ride, and did not stir for 6 hours while the mesa came back up around us, and the stone walls of the main house appeared on the ridge ahead. Leela rode alongside and watched the horizon with the expression she carries when she has decided things are going the way they ought to. We married in June, in the main room of the house, by a circuit preacher who wrote the record out in a plain hand, and did not ask questions I couldn't have answered well. Mara witnessed it. The boy, his name was Cal, tugged at Leela's sleeve during the words, and whispered something, and she bent down and listened with the full attention she gives to everything, however small. Later I asked what he had said. He asked if the horses were ours now, she said. What did you tell him? I told him they were. That was 8 years ago. The north fence line has held since. Every fall I restring it the way she showed me. Wire pulled to even tension, each post carrying its share, the strain distributed correctly from one end to the other. She says I have finally got it right. She is not wrong about that. She is not wrong about most things. Mara is still in the east cabin. Her children run the south pasture like it belongs to them, which in the ways that count, it does. On winter evenings, when the herd is settled and the stove is going in the main room, there are more voices in this house than I ever expected to hear again. Leela sits at the kitchen table with her back straight and her hands around her coffee cup, and she decides things the way she has always decided them, on her own terms, in her own time, and the mesa that I once believed was mine alone has not been mine alone for 8 years now. It belongs to both of us. That was the agreement. I mean to keep it.